Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Carmine Biancardi. I keep reminding you my name to every lecture. I'm very pleased to see even a few, but many people here, considering the amazing weather we have today, and that people can be on shore until 7:30 p.m. So thank you very much for joining me this lecture. As you possibly realized, Narvik is an interesting place for a number of reasons. If you're interested in nature and the midnight sun, which is the picture taken here from the hill of Narvik, which is ending very soon as we are going south, or the northern lights that are on right now, but you cannot see because we have 24 hours sun. But there is another important reason why Narvik is extremely important in the history of Norway and Europe. Let's see where is located Narvik, because the location of Narvik is important for understanding what has been happening in this place, so north, in the north, far north of Europe. So Narvik, as you know, is in the fjord, in the Hofot Fjord, which is 120 miles north of the Arctic Circle. So we are right in the Arctic Circle. It is close to Sweden. You see the border here. Probably in one of your tours, they told you that we are very close to Sweden. And some of the guys, they just live on the border, just walk in the morning to Sweden. The reason why in Europe now you can walk around, because as you possibly know, we have the Schengen, and all the countries they signed the Schengen, we have no borders in Europe, so we can move everywhere in Europe with no passport and no ID. The town is in this peninsula. It is surrounded by mountain, as you have seen. This beautiful mountain that are around here. I'm just trying now to remind you what you have seen today, which is a majestic mountain here in Narvik. As any other place in Norway, the troggenfish, the stockfish, whatever is around the fish is present, and they have a fishing production over here. Well, if you see Narvik at the winter time, it will look quite different from what I've seen here today. And possibly some of you have been traveling to the ski resort over here. The ski resort, of course, they're open at the winter time. The high season here is between middle of December, around Christmas time, until April and May, and they are illuminated. They say in the evening. The problem is that the evening sometime is 24 hours, the polar night. It's very popular activity here in Narvik. Some of you possibly have seen the Romba-Skrubroa bridge over the Strømmen Bay on the other fjord. I don't know how many of you they crossed today. So I'm just now bringing you to some memories of what you have seen during the day. And the scenery on the winter time is extremely different. However, now we have to go a little bit back and to see what happened in Narvik. And I start from a different thing. You probably heard about the Arctic train. Did any one of you took the ride on the Arctic train? Okay. Now, this is the modification. Now became a touristic attraction, but is still used for another reason. As you can see, Narvik port is here. Here we are in Sweden. In this area, there is the iron ore mines. And the iron ore mines, they go to the port of Narvik or the port of Luleå, which is another amazing city that I've been visiting in the past. Actually, they have a very good restaurant. They have one of the 3-star Michelin restaurants in Sweden. However, that's why I remember very well. However, most of the iron ore goes to Narvik. Why to Narvik? Because even being north of the Arctic Circle, the port of Narvik has been ice-free for 12 months. So strategically, was important because this port is always in operation. Does not have the time where get iced and the ships cannot dock. So this is an extremely important in this area. Now, this line was built, the red line here, this is the Hofton line. Of course, then the Arctic train had been extended now for touristic reason. You leave from Narvik, you get to Stockholm. But I believe the train of today was cancelled to Stockholm. There was only a short trip that you could take. We have to a little bit consider what happened during the construction. Now, this took 3 major periods. The first period was the original construction. It was from 1883 to 1902. As you probably heard, the workers were working with their hand to break the rocks and to put the rail at that time. So this construction was important because it was connecting the port of Narvik with Kiruna's iron ore mine, as I told you. And these were the workers at that time, and this was when was arriving in Narvik. After that, has been electrified, and this was the first electrified railway in Norway. And then has had some additional improvements in the year. And that's when it became electric. Even today, the Hofton railway is still used to ship iron ore from the mines in Kiruna in Sweden to Narvik, as you have seen all these cargo ship loading iron. However, what is interesting in the construction, when they built this bridge that they called the Norddalsbrua at that time, the Norway military demanded a special bridge which can be destroyed to stop enemy train transport in case anything would happen. Why? Because you see this tunnel. When you get on the other side of the tunnel, you are in Sweden. For some reason, the Norwegian military thought well to build a bridge which can be easily destroyed. And they built this bridge. Now we have to get a little bit back into history. Let me go back. Sorry, we have a lot of things here, but I want to summarize. Don't worry, I'm not going to read all this. You know, World War I, the First World War, ended up by 3 countries allied, they winning the war. Was United Kingdom, France, and Italy. They defeated Germany. Germany wanted to make a larger empire, to extend the empire they had over Europe and Turkey. But they lost the war. And to lose the war, they made a treaty. They called the Treaty of Versailles, which was signed in 1919. This treaty possibly has been the cause of Nazis. And this is the reason. Basically, the treaty had some major provision. The first provision was territorial losses. So basically, the Germans lost land in France, Belgium, Denmark, and Poland. For example, in France, they lost Alsace-Lorraine, which is a French region, and they speak German dialect. It was bordering with Switzerland and Germany. They lost all this land. They had the military restrictions. So Germany army was limited to 100,000 troops, and they cannot develop tanks, air force, a limited navy. There was a world guilty cause, which was considered an humiliation for the Germans. So they accepted responsibility for World War I, and they had to pay reparation for all the damages they imposed to the other countries, because this war was deliberated, started from Germany. So there was an economic hardship for Germany at that point. And what happened when there is economic hardship? Adolf Hitler rise. You know, Adolf Hitler was not German. He was Austrian. Austria was incorporated to Germany, and Hitler exploited this German pride and the resentment they had. So he bring this to the people, He was able to promise with the Nazi ideology to reject the treaty that they signed, so they agreed. And he wanted to restore Germany glory. And that's how he got political ascendancy. He was nominated chancellor in 1933. And that's where the Nazi started. What were the consequences at that point? The consequence was that Germany was back with an aggressive expansion. They wanted to build a Third Reich. Third Reich means the Third Empire. So they believed, okay, the first empire was the Roman Empire. The second one was the one which ended up with the First World War. And you want to make the Third Reich, which in German means the Third Empire. So this ultimately brought to the Second World War. When actually started the Second World War? Started in September 1st, 1939. So many years after he was nominated chancellor or prime minister, like we say these days. 2 days after, Great Britain and France declared war on Germany. So basically, on September 3rd, started the Second World War, which lasted 6 years. And as you know, this has been the most dramatic war we never had on Earth, which destroyed land, properties, and the number of lives which have been lost is not totally clear, but possibly goes around 100 million people lost in the Second World War. So at that point, the situation was like this one. There were two groups, the Axis power, which was an agreement between the three powers of Germany, Italy, and Japan, each one having different interests. And the other one was at the beginning only Great Britain and France. Soviet Union and United States joined later on. I will tell you why they joined later on, these two. Basically, Soviet Union in 1940, they signed an agreement with Germany. So they were sort of allied with the Germans. But then eventually they changed it. Do you see the pictures here? This is the picture after the World War. You see that it's missing Charles de Gaulle from France. I don't want to go over that. But you know, France was occupied by the Nazis. And a large portion of France was Nazis during the Second World War, while Charles de Gaulle was independent. So at the beginning, he was not admitted in this group. The other two are the German Hitler and Italian Mussolini. Is missing the Japanese Hirohito. But we are talking about the Second World War here in Europe. So what was the situation between these two groups? This is important because then this impacted Narvik. So the Axis power, as we said, they were led by Germany, Italy, and Japan, and there was Hitler, Mussolini, and Emperor Hirohito. They formalized this tripartite pact in 1940, and later on were joined by Croatia, Hungary, Romania, Slovakia. All these countries that participated in the Holocaust. Usually we think always about Italy and Germany, but these other countries as well, they were responsible and they implemented Holocaust during Second World War. That's why I like to remind that the situation in Europe was a little bit different. The Allied power at the beginning was made by Great Britain. At the time, Prime Minister was Churchill. And then later on, they joined the United States and the Soviet Union. They signed a declaration of the United Nations in January 1st, 1942. So 2 years later than the three axes. And then during the time, another 15 other states and 8 occupied countries joined the Allies. And then at the end of the war, another 20 more states had joined the Allies. The difference, there was a huge difference between the two groups. Why the Allies had a coordinated joint strategy, the Axis, the only thing they had only a mutual support, but they had no coordination, which somehow can be one of the reasons they, at a certain point, they lost the war. So what was the situation there? So we had Italy, that he believed in the supreme power of the state. He started to create colonies for the Italian Empire, going to look mostly in Africa, and on the other side, like Albania and Greece. The Germany, as I say, they wanted to build the Third Reich at that point, and they started with the occupation of Poland, and then in France, in 1940. That's an important date, 1940, for France. And then Japan, which was on Asia, so had lesser impact here in Europe. This was the situation of the Allies. Two things I would like to underline. The reason that the United States took time to join the Allies is because at that time they had a neutrality act done by Washington. So it was done in 1935, 1937, and 1939. So they had to change this act to join the Allies. This happened in 1940. That's why the United States joined in 1941. It became one of the key allies in the Second World War. Great Britain was the leading country. And the interesting fact is that UK, or the Great Britain, has at the beginning, because of the World War I, an agreement with Italy, which was broken by the time Italy moved to the Axis. France, somehow, they wanted to appease Hitler, so they declared the war to Germany, but they were occupied by Nazis in 1940. So the large majority of the country was under control of Germany. The Russia, or the Soviet Union, they play a double role. At the beginning, they had an agreement with the Germany. And only later on, when they realized that the Hitler goal was larger, they joined the Allies. At that time, Norway was neutral. Norway, like in World War I, they want to keep to be neutral. And they were very keen in their neutrality. At the same time, they did not have a professional army, which was another important aspect. And they were very keen to be neutral. The way they were doing the army, as you see, they were having fun. They had a sort of army, but it was like, I don't want to exaggerate, like having fun, having camping. They had some, very casual training at that time. And this was something which has been changing then what happened in Narvik. And they kept this neutrality even after the occupation of Germany. They want to be neutral, and they try to keep it. But why there was this big interest? Let's be clear. The interest on Narvik was not only from the Axis, was also from the Allies. In fact, the British were already present unofficially in Narvik, tried to negotiate agreement with Narvik. Why? Because there was a war, and the iron ore was gold for the war, for the making arms. So both sides, unfortunately, were prepared to violate the neutrality to secure this resource. This was the situation. So Narvik, in one way or another, was in the middle of a big war. So what happened? As I say, they could go to invade Sweden. But why they did not invade Sweden, I will tell you very soon. They needed this iron ore. So this was Narvik at that time. Was a peaceful area. They were just doing their work, their job. And they launched what is called the Operation Weserborgen. So at that time, both Denmark, which was invited as well at the same time, and Norway, they were neutral. So they attacked anyway, without any problem. When they attacked, this was on April 9, 1940. Of course, we understand that at that time, they came with their fleet, the Germans, and the people of Narvik did not realize anything until they realized that they were getting bombed by the Germans. So at that point started what is called the battles of Narvik, which was negative, but for the Allies there was one single positive point. This was the battle which there was the British at that point, they were committed that they had to have a Navy victory to any cost, to any price. They want to have a victory. And they worked. And there was one of the toughest fight on the bay here, on the fjord of Narvik. Apparently, it seems that the Allies would win. This was the one in Narvik after the invasion of Poland, was the toughest battle never had in the Second World War, excluding, of course, the Russia campaign, which came later on. I would like to take a little bit of your time to show one of the original movies. Oh, sorry. Let's no start. This is from the British reporter and cameraman.
Presenting the world to the world. This is the story of the two battles of Narvik Fjord, as seen and recorded by our cameras on board ships that actually took part in the operation. The story opens on patrol. In the Arctic seas, as always and everywhere, the Royal Navy is on the watch. This is the wall of steel that is never pierced, and this is the daily task of the men who man the ships.
These are from the Second Battle of Narvik, when the British were attacking the Germans.
Enlivening the endless routine of watching, the lookout man spots a U-boat periscope, depth charges. Another U-boat fails to return home. So much for routine. But on the 9th of April, the rugged fjords of neutral Norway rocketed into world headlines. Germany had landed troops in Narvik, Bergen, Trondheim, Oslo. On the 10th of April, units of the British Navy went into action. In Narvik, 5 heroic destroyers went in to meet a much stronger force of the enemy, aided by shore batteries. Hardy, Hunter, Hotspur, Hostile, and Havoc. HMS Hunter was sunk. HMS Hardy's control was battered and she ran aground. But the other 3 withdrew, leaving the enemy in no condition to pursue. Of the German forces, 1 was reported sunk, 3 more were left burning fiercely. 6 supply ships were sunk, and an ammunition ship was blown up. In Britain, an expeditionary force was made ready at incredibly short notice to leave for the war zone. Aggression had spread north to Scandinavia, but we were ready to meet force with force. The Allies were fulfilling their promise of help to a weak neutral, wantonly and murderously attacked. But before the British troops could land, it was the Navy's job to prepare the way. Led by the battleship HMS Warspite, another force of destroyers headed for Narvik Fjord. Once again, the shore batteries held by the Nazis blazed into action. But this time, the German invaders were utterly routed. 4 destroyers were sunk in Narvik Fjord itself. 3 more ran for it into Rumbak's Fjord. These were pursued by 3 British destroyers and were put completely out of action and destroyed. Thus, the 2 battles of Narvik ended in decisive victory for the British Navy. Thus, the world learned that Britain's sea power is still supreme. All the world has found that out except Germany. They've still got it to come. HMS Hardy was the flotilla leader, commanded by a very gallant officer, Captain Warburton Lee. He led the division into Narvik Fjord to start the first battle. Survivors of HMS Hardy who landed in Norway were taken aboard HMS Ivanhoe after the second battle. These are some of the officers in borrowed Norwegian kit. Another episode was the capture of the German supply ship Alster. In the German manner, her crew attempted to scuttle, but prompt action by the intercepting British warship prevented this, and her cargo were taken as prize. Her crew was commanded by Captain Sharp, formerly of the Europa. The ships that took part in that great action resumed their normal duties, but they left the waters of Narvik Fjord a graveyard of German ships. Warships and supply ships littered the rocky water's edge, a tribute for all the world to see to the might of the Royal Navy. This action has given courage to small nations that have lived for years in the shadow of aggression. That was one action, but along the great length of the Norwegian coastline and in the Skagerrak and the Kattegat, the Navy has been and still is on the job. So once again we can welcome in a British port some of the submarines that have been doing such wonderful work. This is the submarine Seal, back home after bottling up the German fleet and transports in the face of unbelievable dangers.
Some of the wreck are still in the water, if you have seen them, going around the shore. At the same time, the Norwegians got organized on 14th of April 1940. So this is the bridge we're talking before, right? And the Norwegian army was working on the bridge because they knew that the Germans would come to try to get control of this bridge. Now I have a much shorter movie to show you. Anyway, this is taken from the movie Narvik, which was produced by Netflix. It's a very short one. It gives you an idea of the Norwegian army, non-professional Norwegian army. It's not the reality, but it's very close to the reality of what happened at that time. I could not find any original movie because they did not film at that time. This is the wife of the army soldier. represented like they were not trained for doing that. They were just these are the Germans. They made it.
Kommer han pappa?
Now, even though they were able to bring it down, that victory did not last too much. Here I try to summarize what happened at that time. So as we say, on April 9, they were attacked by the Germans. They launched this operation in Weserberg, and they occupied all Norway, capturing Narvik. On the 13th, there was the first battle of Narvik, which was lost by the Allies. Then in April 13th, the second naval battle with the British warspite and the destroyer defeat remaining German naval turrets. But why they were winning, something happened because France was attacked and was occupied by the Germans. So the Allied force had to leave, and they had to go back to defend their own countries. So the French, which they helped a lot in Narvik, the French army, they had to leave, to go back. So the Germans occupied Narvik and occupied Norway. So on 14th of May, even though they had some sort of success, that withdrew to go back to defend France. However, at the same time, the king of Norway was King Haakon VII, and the Crown Prince Olav fled to UK. Along with the Norwegian government, they were in exile in London. So the country was without any Norwegian leadership at that point. Norway was fully occupied. And some of the Norwegians have been fighting as partisan or in other place of Europe, joining the Allied forces, while some other became collaborative with the Nazis, like it happens in many other countries in Europe. So what was the forces on the field? The Allies, the British, the French, and the Polish, they had about 38,000 troops in the north before they had to withdraw, had to go back. So as I say, they had to withdraw on 14th of May because France was attacked, even though then France was partially occupied by the Germans. The Norwegian government went into exile. And so at the end of the day, Germany occupied Norway. Why Sweden was not attacked, was not occupied? This is a question, a key question. Basically, the Swedish government negotiated an agreement with Adolf Hitler in which they gave up part of their independence and freedom, so they give concessions to Germany. So in other words, we could say that it was a sort of a protectorate of Germany, Sweden. That's why they were not invaded. So at the end of the day, after the battle of Narvik finished, Norway, particularly this, where I think a piece of this is still visible in the water. They did not took away just to show that there was this big battle. So Narvik remained under the German control. Nevertheless, what is important in Narvik, the Battle of Narvik was the first defeat of Hitler. That's what probably he realized that the Allies realized that they could defeat the Germans. And the New York Enquirer published the first saying that the British repulsed in Narvik attack, but they tried to defend the Germans. So there were 62 days of battles, as we have seen. The capitulation was on June 10, 1940. There were lost 64 ships, 86 planes, and 8,500 lives are lost during the Narvik campaign between the both sides. So what happened to the people of Narvik? This was the situation after the battle. This is downtown Narvik. You cannot even recognize today because everything has been rebuilt with different style, different houses. And this other picture is even more representative. As you can see, almost nothing was left after this cruel battle in the town of Narvik. One question comes, maybe some of you saw the movie Narvik. Did any one of you saw the movie? Few of you. Now, the question is, the key families here is the Tofties in this movie. Often the people ask me, this is the picture of the actors. They they really are real? No, this is not real. The movie Narvik is not a real movie, but I would say that they represent quite well what was the situation of the families and the people in Narvik. You know, the fear and the pressure they had, having from one side hiding the British, because they were hiding the British, and the other side, the Nazis, they want to know. And the Nazis, you know, they were saying, okay, if you don't give us, we send you and your kid to Berlin. And so the family said, okay, let me collaborate because I don't want to go away to Berlin. For them, it was nowhere, Berlin, at that time. Luckily, on 8th of May 1945, the war ended, and like the rest of Europe, was liberated by the Nazi occupation. So after 5 long years, Narvik came back to the reality. But what happened? This was the architecture of Narvik. This is the only house which is left after the battles of Narvik. These are the two perspectives. I don't know if you had the chance to see them traveling around Narvik. You see that now the way they build is totally different. They have like these metallic or wood houses, very nice, very simple, like larger cottages. So this gives you an idea of how much the damages and loss of properties were done in Narvik. The people in Narvik had no liability because they had the port of Narvik. They were just peaceful people. I hope you had the time to have a visit at the Narvik War Museum. It's one of the best war museums here in Norway, where you can see in display part of the army, even a part of the dressing, you know, of the people locally. This is from a waitress, and of course, the people of Norway and Narvik are extremely proud people. And this is how looks today Narvik, the one we have seen today. You see, I told you it's totally different. There are no houses left in the architecture, which was the typical construction in Narvik. I would like to make a closing remarks, and then I would like also to honor the brave souls that have been fighting in Europe. So as we've been around the history here, the World War II, it's true that there was a war, but the people of Narvik, they were able to survive and to change the city in a vibrant and modern community, as you have seen. Now they work a lot on tourism, both in the wintertime and the summertime. And their bravery and perseverance, they have to remind us that human beings have strength if we use our human spirit. This is a lesson of the courage and determination that should inspire us all. Remember, these people were not professional people. They had no professional army. So in one day, they had to learn how to fight the Germans. And they were not easy. These were professional army, the Germans. And they defeated them for a couple of days. They did it together with the Allies. Is an example how a community can be rebuilt after a major disaster like a war. And they had the capacity, had the valuable insight, because their pride, they believe in their land. They really like this place. So they had to rebuild everything. I would like to remember the words of Winston Churchill. I think particularly the British people would be happy about that. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is not the courage to continue that counts. So you have to be brave enough to keep going. You cannot stop. One victory is not the end of anything. I hope that this history of Narvik can inspire all of us for the future of our world. But I would like to close with the words of the national anthem of Norway. Now they changed the words lately, but I think that is the case since we are here on this land where people have been dying and suffering for longer, 5-6 years, to pay honor to this South with the anthem of Norway. Definitely touching words to end this lecture today. I thank you very much for joining me in this lecture. And I will be back tomorrow with another lecture on the role of fjords in the Norwegian trade and business at, I believe, 6:30 if they don't change the time. At the 7:30, we'll have a forum on the situation of affairs in the Arctic Circle for the one that are interested. This will be in the Torshavn, it will be at the 7:30. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.